higher preference would be a motion to table.
Yes, motion to table. But also just to remind the body, during the debates, Mr. President, a question was asked. I do not recall who asked the question, but the question was asked about that. If the BFP wanted to be armed. And the answer clearly given to us by the resource persons na ayaw nila na may baril. Ayaw nila ng baril. I clearly remember that, Mr. President. So just for the record, no, before we take this up later on, although it's tabled as of the moment.
Mr. President, point of order, Mr. President. Mr. President, my parliamentary role here, Mr. President, is to transfer the document supporting this amendment and let the sponsor comply with the request of the minority
Yes.
leader.
But what happened is that after you proposed it, the sponsor accepted, which I did not clearly hear anyway, but he accepted. But there is an objection. And they
Dispose of it, Mr. President.
so before we dispose, we've already disposed it because the motion to table of the majority leader is a higher preference. And if there is no objection to the motion to table,
Maybe, Mr. President.
It-
Yeah, I could withdraw the motion, Mr. President. I mean,
Ah.
it's a very simple amendment. We just either approve it or reject it. I personally am not in favor of arming the BFP. So,
Yes.
is well, I understand that there is validity on the on
kasi
the
usually ang ginagawa dyan nila, Mr. President, with due respect to our distinguished colleagues, when there is an operation of fire breakout in a particular community, they coordinate with the PNP. So the PNP, bumabantay ang PNP sa kanila while they are putting the fire out. Because even in the United States, the firefighters are not armed. They're armed with love. As a matter of fact, yan ang mahal na mahal sila ng mga Amerikano, yung firefighters. Yung police, galit na galit sila doon
but
in the United States. So
there are
that's the usual
different-
practice, Mr. President.
there is different situation in the United States, masyadong moderno, even mga towns nila eh. Dito sa atin, when you're talking of the provinces in some areas, in the provinces, meron mga nice people around. May mga insurgents. Ibang
Hindi po,
klase
yes.
sa atin eh. So, there is value, there is really value on the proposal. But again, the point of the minority leader is that it's a very controversial amendment. So instead of debating on it now and deciding on it, it's best that we table it. Senator Lacson is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is just a point of clarification. Does the proponent of the amendment mention to be issued or just to possess firearm?
I think
Issue.
bearing is another word for possession, carrying, and you cannot be carrying something without having been issued.
No, not necessarily, Mr. President, because since you mentioned RA 10591, that is an act providing for a comprehensive law on firearms and ammunition and providing penalties for violations thereof, there's already Section 4 in that law that says this pertains to possession of firearms, that any individual, as long as he is qualified, like gainfully employed, may psychiatric test, pumasa sa gun safety seminar, so any
fireman will qualify.
fireman can qualify if he so applies, Mr.
So
President.
you're saying we don't need this
It's
proposal.
redundant, Mr. President,
We don't
because
need
there's
this,
already
in
an existing
the-
law that covers that. That's why I ask if it's if the firearms are to be issued or just to be possessed.
Mr. President,
If I may,
Mr. President,
while I still have
Mr. President,
Well, it's actually on the floor is Senator Tolentino and the minority leader, Senator Drilon.
Mr.
So
President,
it's either of you. Go ahead.
my earlier point of order establishes that once this is accepted by the sponsor, he now carries the burden of defending this, Mr. President. Because he's the sponsor.
I accept that burden,
Because
Mr.
he
President.
already
No,
accepted
no
that, Mr.
problem.
very clear,
I am gladly accepting
President.
the burden.
While this is now tabled, he is now the
problem.
proponent, Mr. President. That's parliamentary procedure here, Mr. President.
Right. Well, all right. The minority leader in a form of a suggestion that you be given copies of the printed proposal instead of acting on it. The presiding officer is constrained not to adopt the motion right now because of the suggestion. So therefore, the motion to table was suggested. The majority leader filed it, and I think it's best that we leave it that way at the moment.
Yes, Mr.
Ano?
President, I will submit the documents to the sponsor, and through the sponsor, the written amendment, proposed amendment, will be submitted to the minority leader.
No, and to the rest of the senators.
Yes, Mr. President.
Also,
yes, Mr.
yes.
President.
Mr. President, so
All the members of the Senate.
for the record, we have not accepted the amendment yet as a body. So
Yes,
it
yes.
is now tabled for discussion.
Yes, correct.
Gusto ko lang hong i-put on record, Mr. President, if indeed the BFP had this change of hearts, Mr. President, that they wanted to be armed. Because if you look at the measure itself, Mr. President, on page 4, letter K, instead of them very clear, Mr. President, they're requesting assistance of the Philippine National Police, Armed Forces of the Philippines, or any other agency of the government, including government-owned and controlled corporations, in exercising its powers and functions, Mr. President. And I don't think we are giving away the law enforcement powers to our firefighters, Mr. President. Just to put that on
Yeah.
record.
Nevertheless, the important point was raised by Senator Lacson, which is they can. We need not put it in the law. Oh, may batas na ganun eh. Yeah, Senator De La Rosa,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Mr. President, I just would like to put on record that the statement of the majority leader regarding the firefighters' acceptability on arming themselves. I just would like to correct that the statement should go like this. Hati sila, Mr. President. Hindi sila lahat ayaw, hindi naman sila lahat gusto, but I don't know the percentage of division, but some of them wanted to be issued with firearms and some of them doesn't want. So that's the real score, Mr. President. And I just would like to put it in record that this amendment is born out of the request coming from Malacanang, from the President, that his intention was to arm the Bureau of Fire Protection personnel with short firearms, Mr. President, because he wanted to make this personnel available to support the law enforcement operations of the PNP and the AAP, Mr. President. Aside from the fact that during the per experience, during the Zamboanga siege and Marawi siege, kawawa yung ating mga firemen doon na pagbagsak ng bomba, nasunog yung building, tatawag yung frontliners doon ng mga tropa ng bombero to suppress the fire, and these firemen had nothing to protect themselves except the fire hoses. Ang gusto lang ng presidente na mabigyan sila kahit short firearm man lang para makalaban sa mga ganong sitwasyon. And also, Mr. President, during fire incidents at the fire scene, this is a very common happening wherein yung mga siraulong tao mangangagaw ng hose ng mga fireman. At yung fireman naman ay maraming fireman na nasasaktan dahil may mga itak itong dala na gusto nila agawin yung hose, unahin yung kanilang bahay na basain kahit malayo pa sa sunog dahil nga gusto nila na masave yung bahay nila. So kahit na malayo sa order of yung pagbuhos ng tubig, inaagaw nila. Yung fireman naman natin, walang dalang armas, hindi sila kinatakutan. So kung magkaka-armas itong mga fireman, takot na itong mga siraulo na guguluhin na itong mga fireman. And Mr. President, additional reason bakit gusto natin armasan yung mga fireman is that alam niyo, Mr. President, darating yung panahon, and it's very near already, that pag-shift ng focus ang ating military, ating armed forces of the Philippines from insurgency, from counter-insurgency to external threat. lalong-lalo na sa threat natin ngayon sa West Philippine Sea. And the problem of insurgency will be treated as a purely law enforcement problem and no longer a military problem and shall be transferred to the PNP. Now, kung ang PNP natin ay masyadong occupied, busy, na nagkakandak ng internal security operations, hihingi sila ng suporta sa Bureau of Fire na sila muna magmaman sa mga police stations, sila muna magmaman sa mga kalsada, sila muna magmaman sa police visibility doon sa kanilang area kasi yung mga police ay aakyat sa bundok at makipaglaban sa mga NPA. So yan po nakikita ni Presidente dahil noon pa man, Mr. President, naging practice na talaga natin, huwag na tayong magbase sa ibang bansa. Sa atin lang, sa Pilipinas, na yung fire talaga at yung police ay inseparable yan noon. Maraming instance na nag-operate ang kapulisan sa bundok kasama ang fire, may isyong armas. So, yun na po ang ating purpose dyan, na sana makasuporta yung fire natin kasi we are now nearing the end of this insurgency problem. At gusto ni Presidente na diinan ito na bago yung term niya, matapos yung problema ng insurgency, mag-focus lahat ng pulis doon sa problema ng insurgency. So, yung fireman makatulong na mag-assume sa kanilang mga law enforcement duties sa poblasyon, Mr. President. So, yun lang po ang intensyon.
Senator Poe has been seeking the floor. We waited until you were finished. So, Senator Poe, you are recognized. Wait. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Actually, ako, nagpapasalamat ako sa proponent ng batas na ito. Dati din ako naging public order chairman at inaamin ko na marami talagang dapat ayusin doon sa Bureau of Fire Protection. At maraming salamat that you're taking this up. Actually maraming natutuwa kay General Bato, Mr. President. Masipag siya. Pero dito sa pagkakataon na ito, ako po ay talagang tutol. Unang-una, naintindihan ko na pag may mga pasaway sa mga pinupuntahan ng mga may sunog, may mga kawatan din dyan na umaagaw ng kung ano-ano sa ating mga bumbero. Pero, hindi ba pwedeng i-coordinate na lang sa PNP na pag mayroong mga sunog na ganyan, samahan na lang sila kasi hindi lamang yan pag binigyan mo yan ng barel, may kasama dyan na training kung paano gamitin ang baril na yan, merong monitoring na kailangan pang gawin. Tapos kung sinasabi din ng ating sponsor na marami tayong mga kinakalaban ngayon at maaaring sa pagdating ng panahon ay makipag-sabayan na rin ang ating mga Bureau of Fire Protectors. Hindi po yun ang intensyon ng kanilang trabaho, hindi po yan ang kanilang mandato. Didagdaganin yung PNP na pwede nating makipagsapalaran sa mga pangangailangan nating domestic na mga hamon. Pero, Mr. President, para bigyan ko sila ng baril para gawin ang kanilang trabaho, parang hindi naman yata naaayon yan sa kanilang sinumpaang tungkulin at mandato. The mere fact that 50% of them are ambivalent about this, are not sure about whether or not they should have guns, is a big indication that they themselves know the limit of their mandates. Mr. President, pag binigyan natin ng baril yan, dadagdag pa yung budget natin because training is important, number one, before they can handle guns. Number two, also the responsibility of handling guns. Pag meron dyan, alam mo, sa isang batalyon, meron isang siguro bulok na prutas dyan. Madadagdagan na naman ang kailangan natin i-monitor dahil baka magwala pag bagong taon o meron na namang makaaway sa kanto.